In this video, I'm not only going to talk about the current market, but I'm going to give you the tools that you can use in virtually any market. So first, what we're going to do is look at some data points, and then I'm going to break it down and give you my interpretation of the data and spell out what it means for you as a buyer or a seller. This video is being made in the spring of 2024, but if you're watching this much later, the concepts I'm talking about can be applied to really any market. Let me explain. First, we're going to talk about inventory, which seems important, but it's not the most important number I'm going to talk about in this video. If you don't already know, inventory is basically a measurement to show overall supply versus demand in the market. If the inventory is low, it means that in general, the demand is high. And if inventory is high, it means in general that demand is lower relative to how much supply there is. That said, there are opportunities in every market for both buyers and sellers. Currently in Portland, there is historically lower inventory. In January of 2024, we had 3.2 months of inventory, which was actually the second highest it's been in over 24 months. In February, it went back down to 2.8 months. In March, it was 2.2. I couldn't wait long enough to make this video to find out what April inventory looked like, but I will leave that information down in the description if you're really dying to know. Point is, if you're confused about how we use months as a way of measurement, to put it in simple terms, if there is 2.5 months of inventory, in theory, it just means that if no other listings came on the market, it would only take 2.5 months for all that inventory to sell or expire from the market based on the current amount of sales occurring in that area. In actual practice though, what the market is doing in Portland, or anywhere for that matter, is going to vary from area to area, square mile to square mile, and even house to house. The data point that really matters, that is most important for buyers and sellers, is the days on market based on any given area, or how long it takes listings to receive and accept an offer. I'll give you an example. If you are selling your house, and buyers listen up here too, and the median time on market for every house to sell within a half-mile radius in the last 6 months is 14 days, you should reasonably expect an offer within that amount of time, right? Well, there's another number that's important here, and that's the price of the house. Because if the buyers out there disagree with the price, it may not sell within the same amount of time as the rest of the neighbors. It may not sell at all, actually. And the reason I bring this up is because as a seller, you need to make absolute sure that your home sells in that amount of time or less. Whatever it is, it may be 16 days in some areas, or in some it might be 6. So it just is important to have a realtor listing your house that understands how to interpret the data of any given neighborhood and know how to advise you on the strategy based on what that data says. Otherwise, if you sit on the market just a little bit too long, you're basically handing all your leverage straight to the hands of the buyer. When a seller lists their house, the most important number you could ever look at is the days on market, and how much money any house will eventually sell for, or how high above or below the list price it will sell for, depends entirely on its relation to that number. What I typically do when I'm working with a seller client is look at all the recently sold listings within a half-mile radius of that address and determine how long it took all the other listings there to sell, and assume that this house should also reasonably fit into that time frame. For example, let's just assume that the median time on market for a seller's home is 10 days. One of 3 things could possibly happen when that house hits the market when taking that number into consideration. The most ideal scenario for any seller is the house gets listed, and within that amount of time, you get lots of interest, lots of showings, and ultimately an offer that the seller is willing to accept. The second scenario that tends to happen is that the listing will get a decent amount of interest and showings, but no buyers that are willing to pull the trigger. That is an indication of a slightly too high list price, in which I recommend a price change by usually about 5%. And the last and most unfortunate situation that can occur possibly is when you list the house and just have very little interest, little to no showings, and certainly no offers. This is when an aggressive price adjustment is needed by at least 10%. Typically, when these adjustments are made, it excites the buyers enough to put in an offer somewhere between the new list price and the original list price. With that said, buyers, you and your agent That's me, can use this information to your advantage when you're shopping for houses. If you're looking for a house in a neighborhood and notice that the home has been on the market for 26 days, when the median time on market for other sold houses is only 12 days, you might have an opportunity to take leverage in the form of a lower sales price, or even better and smarter, in the form of credits that you can use to lower your interest rates if you're financing, or maybe even both in certain scenarios. These types of opportunities exist in many markets depending on a number of factors, which include seller strategy, list price, which is affected generally by the seller's motivation and their financial needs, and sometimes even their pride and ego around the property. It's a good listing agent's job to communicate directly with their clients and advise objectively on what it will take to sell the home, including price, regardless of whether or not that agent thinks it might scare the seller away from selling at all. And regardless of whether or not there is 2 months or 12 months of inventory, these same concepts using the median time on market to gauge the list price to sales price ratio apply. You see, it's a tricky thing with human psychology where people will only overpay for a house if they think it's a good price, but if the price is too high or even just perfectly spot on in a lot of cases, people won't even want to look at it. There's so many different metrics you can look at that you were probably expecting with this video, but my goal was to hopefully give you some tools to navigate pretty much any market. Comment down below if you learned anything, because the market is always changing, but if you were to ask me how the market is now, my answer will be, well, that depends on what house you want to buy. Certain price ranges are much more competitive than others. You will have a lot more competition in the 300 to 600K range here in Portland than you will in the 700 to 1 million range. But it also depends specifically on what house you want, because as you know, it all varies. Some houses will get multiple offers within the first 2 days, and some just won't. It depends entirely on the price to days on market ratio, and I'm happy to help you analyze that data when you are ready to buy a house here in Portland. Also happy to help you with getting your home sold if you are moving away from Portland. You can find all my contact information right down below this video, and I put it there literally so you could get in touch with me. So make sure you reach out, and also make sure you check out this video right here if you want to hear me talk about what it's actually like to live in Portland, Oregon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you over there.